The Monster of the Andes. The story of Pedro Lopez. Deep in the heart of Colombia, in the small town of Tolima, a child was born in 1948 who would become one of the most prolific serial killers in human history. His name was Pedro Lopez. But his story doesn't start with murder. It starts in a house of horrors. When Pedro was just 8 years old, his mother caught him touching his younger sister. Her response wasn't therapy or compassion. She threw him out, cast him onto the brutal streets of Bogotá. An 8-year-old boy, utterly alone. Imagine the seed of betrayal that was planted in him that day. The world had shown him its worst face before he'd even had a chance to see anything else. And on those streets, the monster began to take root. Alone and feral, young Pedro was swallowed by the city. He survived by his wits, stealing what he could. But soon, he was caught. The system, instead of saving him, delivered him into a new kind of hell. A juvenile detention center. Here, the other boys, the hardened street criminals, saw a small, vulnerable child. They repeatedly beat and raped him. This wasn't a correctional facility. It was a factory for manufacturing hatred. Pedro learned 2 brutal lessons: that the strong prey on the weak, and that human connection is just a prelude to pain. He escaped at age 18, not rehabilitated, but radicalized. He was a walking bomb of rage, and he was about to detonate. His first murder was, to him, an act of righteous vengeance. He lured the man who had been his primary abuser in the institution to a secluded spot and stabbed him to death. And in that moment, as he watched the life drain from his tormentor's eyes, he felt something powerful, elated, in control for the first time in his life. He was hooked. But a dark thought occurred to him. Killing men was dangerous. They fought back. But who in society is weaker? Who is more vulnerable, more easily lured, and whose disappearance is often ignored? He found his answer: young indigenous girls. They were, to him, the perfect prey. And so, his horrific campaign began. Lopez developed a chillingly efficient routine. He would travel to remote villages in Ecuador and Peru, places where people were poor and trusting. He'd smile, a well-dressed stranger offering a coin or a piece of fruit to a young girl playing outside. He was a phantom, slipping in and out of communities. He would lead them away, rape them, and then strangle them. He later described it as an addiction. He claimed he sometimes killed 3 girls in a single day. He didn't just murder them. He buried them in shallow graves, often lying beside them for a time afterward. The number of victims is unknowable. He confessed to over 300. Authorities believe at least 110 are credible. He was an assembly line of death, operating in plain sight. His downfall came not from a brilliant detective, but from a moment of sheer, unbelievable carelessness. In 1980, in the small Ecuadorian town of Ambato, he was seen leading a young indigenous girl away from a market. Minutes later, a woman heard a child scream from a nearby canyon and raised the alarm. A mob of villagers descended. They found Lopez attempting to violate his young victim. They didn't wait for the police. They dragged him through the streets, beating him, ready to tear him apart. He was only saved by the arrival of the army. In custody, faced with his certain death, he did something astonishing. He began to talk, and the scale of the horror he described was so vast it was almost impossible to comprehend. He led authorities to the graves of 53 girls. He described his crimes with a cold, emotionless precision that chilled investigators to the bone. In 1980, he was convicted of 57 counts of murder and sentenced to life in an Ecuadorian prison. But the story doesn't end there. In 1998, citing good behavior and a technicality, Ecuador released him. They deported him to Colombia, who promptly set him free. For 2 years, the monster of the Andes walked among us. He vanished in 2002 after being arrested for minor attempted kidnapping charges. Some reports say he's in a mental institution. Others say he's dead. But the most terrifying possibility is that he's still out there. A ghost. A living reminder of the evil that can be born from a childhood thrown away.